Hello and welcome to another episode of the Axians Network. So when I first saw the working title of this episode, which was Student Learning Experience, I thought we were going to be discussing prog rock, cheap beer and the Labour Party, but that's showing my age. So happily we're going to be discussing campus network architecture, how it is now moving forward to the Axians Reach 2020 initiative, which aims to change the conversation about future campus network architecture. With me today are Roger Snelling. Roger, you were previously to your role now as network consultant, the head of networks at Exeter University, meaning that you were responsible for the wired and wireless data networks along with the telecom systems. So a man with real insight from the university perspective. And Exeter University sort of strikes as being a perfect place to be. Is that right?
Yes, certainly had quite a few challenges. I joined Exeter in 2008 and the architecture was in a pretty dire state, both the data and the telecom side. So it was my role really to sort all that out. So yeah, it's seen quite an advance in technology since then. That was the first introduction actually of the Juniper EX series switches. So Exeter, claim to fame, were the biggest worldwide installation of Juniper switches at that time. So shipping like 700 switches, so fantastic.
That is some claim.
Yeah, and we held it till I think we got pipped to the post by MGM Grand in Las Vegas, but hey, you know.
Not a bad, not a bad second place. Andy Butcher. Nothing the god of campus network architecture wouldn't let you in his heaven for, is there? So 20 years, I believe it is, you've been working in the higher education sector.
Pretty much.
Did you ever leave university?
Yes, absolutely.
And I hear you've just gone back to university.
I did,
as a student.
Yeah.
How's that?
It's interesting to get a different perspective now and to immerse myself in the student journey. And now I see what the student expects from the campus architecture, Wi-Fi always on, VLE always working. Yeah. And getting access to resources when you need them. So it is interesting now to be on the other side, having sold campus lands for so long into higher education, actually now experiencing being a user of it.
So collectively we have all perspectives covered, just about.
Absolutely.
So let's jump in then. So just to set the scene, a question to you both, but Andy, if you'd like to pick up first. In your opinion, what's the state of the nation right now in respect to campus network architecture?
So I think a lot of the problems that we're seeing in campus land today is to do with being behind the curve, where the necessary investment hasn't continued to come for the growth of campus land to keep up with the requirements for new technologies, new user expectations, new styles of learning. The investment in the campus land has still continued to be sort of bursty. You know, once every 5, 7, maybe even 10 years, there's an investment in the campus land. And that's not really necessarily kept pace with the requirements for the university. Added to that, the architecture itself hasn't really evolved in the past 20 years. We're still using an architecture that is historic. It's complicated, it's difficult to configure, certainly difficult to change. And a great deal of complexity in the core of the network, and I think that limits, the complexity limits change and limits the university's ability to add new services. We certainly see many other devices connecting on the network today, don't we, Roger? We see lots of IoT, even IP-enabled lighting and cameras and building management systems, besides just the students' devices themselves that want to connect to the network. So it's a much more complex environment than we might have seen when the networks were built, certainly when Exeter's were built in 2008. It's evolved greatly, and the architecture needs to evolve with that as well.
And another piece of trivia, so in 2008, the iPhone hadn't even been invented. So when you're looking at strategy and design and development of the network architecture, what's around the corner? That's the exciting bit. In 2 years' time, there's going to be some breakthrough technology that we can't even conceive at the moment. As Andy alluded to, the growth of IoT at the moment, that's going to be a big game changer, and we're seeing that invading sort of every aspect now of the infrastructure. So, yeah, that's going to be huge. Interestingly, so I've actually been in higher education for 35 years.
Gosh.
I know, I shouldn't admit to that.
You are the bridesmaid, Andy, here in this relationship.
Yeah, and again, just picking up on Andy's point, the architecture really hasn't evolved. I mean, I can remember back in the 90s installing pretty much the same type of architecture that we see today. So you've got the core distribution edge, and as Andy said, it's fairly static, you know, and it takes a lot of management to maintain it. So I think the future in terms of reference architecture is really exciting. You know, it's starting to address the needs of the consumer, basically, you know, as the student, the researcher, the academic, making it more agile, opening up, you know, possibilities for wired and wireless onboarding. So yeah, it's really exciting. So
just to pull that back a little bit then, so if and I say this in the right way, we have copy repeat sort of thing with the sort of redeployment of new campus lands and etc. If it's not evolved, that must provide some challenges to the university at a business level in terms of attracting the right students from various parts of the world, because that's how a lot of them get their revenues. So is that an issue?
Yeah, I think it is. So part of the underinvestment in higher education has meant that people have lent towards a more commoditised architecture as well, where people are looking to deliver less and less services and just really keep the lights on, keep resilient, highly performing networks in place. And I think that's perhaps had a negative effect. Roger, certainly at Exeter, we had such a high availability of the network infrastructure. It's meant that the need for investment seems to have sort of drifted by. People didn't consider that the network needed investing in. But certainly we've got people coming in from all across the world now. We're in a particularly competitive global landscape for universities, having to attract students from anywhere in the world that could potentially go to new universities that are popping up in China and in India, starting to perform particularly well in the worldwide league tables now. And if they're going to deliver this kind of services that these students need today, they need to be sympathetic to that global reach, to perhaps distance learning, to multiple languages, to getting people to a level of competence in English language before they could even start to work on the course. And equally with limitations on visas and residency, we need to make sure that if we can be flexible enough to perhaps deliver a first year on campus in the UK and then let people return to their native country to continue on the degree course. So there's a real change in the way that we're having to deliver the services to the student today. And with that commoditised campus LAN infrastructure that, as Roger said, you know, most of the architectures today weren't delivered with the expectation of things like smartphones, BYOD, all the IoT kind of devices. They're just not built in the right way. And if we look at some of the most evolving industries over the past 10 years, service provider, for instance, where you know, your service provider that historically would just provide broadband to a CPE in the user's house, and not really know what the user's expectation was. It was just to deliver a broadband service. That's evolved greatly over the years. And now all of the service providers are looking to content provision and bandwidth provisioning and rate limiting, however they go about it, but making sure that they deliver the best possible service and trying to predict what those service changes are going to be over a period of time. And in their world, you have to have an architecture that allows that service differentiation, allows evolution and delivery of new services, and you've got to have that foresight when you design that architecture. Whereas in campus LAN, you know, we're still very reactive, and what that does is it has an effect on the operating model for the university. You know, the complexity comes back down to the network operators and administrators to deliver change and to try and do it fast. But you know, there's still a requirement to do more with less.
So it's quite surprising what I'm hearing here, because on the one hand you have students and the way that they consume information, data, their learning behaviours is radically changed, as we've discussed over the past few years. Yet you're saying that in terms of how a university might deliver that experience to the student, you know, get them through and to give the best grades and to have the great experience and all the brand reputation that goes along with the university. How does a university currently respond then to these things? Is it just piling on more kit, or what is it doing right now?
You answer that one, Roger.
Okay.
You were there.
I was. Well, I think the challenge is even greater than that, because yes, there is an element with student onboarding, but equally you have to address the requirements for academics, research, the corporate element of a university as well. So there's a real eclectic mix, and I always liken it to a small city, really. I mean, you know, the delivery to those consumers, you have to address all those needs. So yeah, I mean, in terms of students, they're looking for something that's agile, dynamic. They can just connect seamlessly, whether it's wired, wirelessly. That they don't really care. They want access to resources when they need them. So you've got that sort of open element. And then conversely, with your corporate network, then you're trying to lock things down, you know, protect your finance systems, protect intellectual property in terms of research. So it's a challenge from the networking perspective. And again, this is where the traditional route has been to basically configure it down to the nth degree, where you basically allocate, you know, a port to a certain protocol and access. But again, you know, that takes a lot of time and effort and complexity, and it'd be great if you could just do away with that and basically have it at the point where the end user connects and they get the resources they need when they connect. So it's that sort of virtualization of the network.
Which segues nicely into my next question, or statement really. Axians is changing the conversation. It's the Reach 2020 initiative. So that is about developing a new campus reference architecture. So tell me about that.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think it is a good segue. We've talked about some of the challenges that universities are faced with, but what we've not talked about much is what they're doing about it.
Yes.
And for many universities, I think there's a great difficulty in evolving that network infrastructure. They're very used to working within the boundaries of budget and also from the architecture they've got, and just trying to bolt things on and trying to make things different, to add layers of security, to add some service models around that. But what we believe is actually a complete evolution of that architecture is timely now. So we went out and surveyed a number of infrastructure managers, network managers, assistant directors within higher education in the UK. And we asked them to help us to prioritise what their day-to-day challenges are and see what's causing them the most pain. I hate the phrase keeping them awake at night, because I'm sure it doesn't do that, but all the same, you know, we've got to evolve the way in which the network architecture helps and supports the university to deliver against their objectives today. You know, not just for student, but for research as well. So that survey allowed us to categorise a number of different challenges and then to build an architecture reference model that would accommodate some of those challenges, find ways in a very vendor agnostic way to accommodate those challenges. We wanted to make sure that as we delivered this reference architecture, we weren't looking for a single vendor approach. We weren't looking for any proprietary mechanisms, and that we were going to work within the boundaries that our customers already have, so existing estate as it exists today. But we have worked closely with Juniper Networks, our business partner in core networking concept, and certainly ourselves and Juniper firmly believe that the model that is used and very successful in service provider today gives them the agility to deliver new services, is a terrific model to take to the higher education market, particularly as we are seeing a multi-tenanted campus LAN. We're seeing the requirement for secure segmentation, for compliance, of course the need for supporting BYOD and IoT and the plethora of devices that we see out there. So our architecture was designed to meet those challenges head on, and to make sure that we would face, excuse me, that we would deal with one challenge and then move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And so the architecture is multi-vendor, and it allows us to really try and meet some of those requirements and deliver an architecture that's nimble, that will reduce the operating overheads that we currently see in the campus LAN environment today, and allow the university to evolve and deliver new services. That's what this is all about. So they can keep up with you know, the complexity of delivering new services as they arrive, and the changing model for higher education, whether that's on campus, remote learning, whether we're using lecture capture and delivering in that way. It doesn't matter what we're trying to achieve. We want to allow the campus network to evolve. And increasingly, as the campus network forms a highly contributing part of a city, we need to make sure we're connecting with transport infrastructure and local resources, whether they're healthcare or policing or emergency services, transportation. And all of these things, they're all going to be connected via IoT over the coming years. Yeah. And for anybody to build a network architecture today, they want to make sure it's open up to work with those other elements in the future.
So this is Reach 2020 is a real collaboration then between the universities. You said we're discussing with universities, so they're involved. We have vendors involved. We talked about Juniper, but there are others.
Yes.
So that really is a new model, we're saying.
And I think it opens it up, you know, in terms of smart city sort of philosophy as well. You know, where you're actually breaking out into, as Andy says, you know, you've got more and more public sector as well engaging. And if you think of the student experience, I mean, typically, so, you know, they're based in a city somewhere, so obviously they're enjoying the social aspects of the city, but there's a duty of care, there's that sort of pastoral care that the universities enjoy as well. You know, they like to make sure, you know,
keeping track of the students.
Keeping an eye on them, But so it is important, you know, I mean, that aspect, you know, in terms of health and well-being is coming to the fore now, I think, increasingly.
So if I can just pick up on that student, so it's again, good time to talk about it. So here I am, I'm a student, I'm probably a mobile first generation person, so I'm coming onto campus connected via my iPhone, or a smartphone, sorry. And by the time I go onto campus, I may have just switched to another device. So in terms of how does Reach 2020 deal with me, I'm just thinking here that a university, thousands of students, potentially multiple devices, that sounds like a mammoth task to register all these devices and get it all sort of connected, and we know who's who in terms of policy enforcement and such things. So how does Reach 2020, kind of high level, deal with that?
Roger?
Okay, so you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, you know, very much the focus is on BYOD now, and I think increasingly universities are expecting the students to turn up with their own equipment, and that they'll want to. So the key there is, you know, point of engagement, how quickly can you attract the students? So this journey actually starts well beyond the students turning up on campus. I mean, there's a wealth of social media, so it's early engagement with students. It's attracting them. A lot of the universities obviously cite themselves as destination universities, so they want to get, you know, the cream of the crop. So yes, they'll be advertising various services, social activities, and effectively so the students register early, and then once they arrive at the campus, again, through IoT and a host of other applications, they can map their way around the campus, see what events are on, you know, in terms of the social aspect. They've got timetabling for teaching. So all these things really sort of form part of the new student experience and the student journey, which, I think for the student, you know, possibly being their first time away from home, you know, as another sort of permanent residence. I mean, it's all important that, you know, they're looked after.
It's a lot broader than I first read Reach 2020,
absolutely.
but we've been talking a lot about the student experience and learning requirements here. But what about the poor people that the operators, the network engineers, the guys in university that have to make all this happen? How is Reach 2020 going to change their lives?
So at the moment, the difficulty in the campus LAN architecture as it exists today is that a lot of change is actually manual. There's a limit to the amount of security that they want to, and policy that they want to enforce on the network. And so a lot of these networks are open. And when you've got an open network, in order to secure the areas that you need to secure, whether that's for research or for corporate and administrative use, then that's a more manual process. And so when you find people moving around the campus, you might have to reconfigure the network to allow them to get access. Our solution is designed to try and take some of that burden away from the network operator. We're going to use automation to first identify the user, the device, and map some identity and device awareness together there to determine a path that user gets through the network. But taking into account that that's got to be automated, they might still move around, they might change from one device to another, and equally that there are going to be different policy requirements for researchers who may need to share data, but equally they may be governed more strictly by security compliance. So the concept here allows as much automation as we possibly can to reduce the overhead on the network operator, give them greater visibility into what's going on the network, and at the same time apply security levels and allow them to get some time back to go and develop those new services that the university so desperately needs to keep up with the service requirements of the researchers, of the academics and of the students alike. And it's given that time back that perhaps is the most value in Reach 2020.
Yeah. Let's not lose sight of the fact that you've still got the academics and researchers,
Yes.
internal staff as well. So it's not just the students. I mean, everybody basically wants to use the Wi-Fi network and be able to onboard as seamlessly as possible. So again, it's setting policy for these people through this new reference architecture that actually allows them to move around freely as well, and set the policies so they get access to the systems that they require as and when. So
it strikes me that this might also work for non-education large organisations, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. The challenge I've always felt within a higher education is a bigger challenge than that in most corporate organisations, because in the corporate you've got a degree of control. You can choose which devices, perhaps certainly which applications your users consume, whereas in a higher education environment, your users are coming to the university with a degree of an expectation. They know how they consume IT better than us old guys do, and they certainly have their own applications and services and ways in which they learn. These are all very, very personal things that they're going to bring along with them to university, and so the university is really there to accommodate that and to make sure that they get the best possible learning journey. As Roger said, it's not just about going to the lectures, it's immersing themselves in the campus life. It's becoming an adult where perhaps they've not left home before, and university is the only place where they can really get that experience. So we want to make it easy for them. Certainly as a student myself, I know that things like access to the VLE, single sign-on, all these really simple things as a user add great complexity for the network operations team. And if we can take some of that pain away and make it easier for the students to enjoy a good experience at the university, then it's a win-win.
So Reach 2020 really is changing the conversation. So I'm a university, how do I get involved?
Okay, well, we're going to be attending a number of events throughout 2018, UCISA events, the JISC events, network shop and security events and so on. And equally, you can contact myself or Roger at Axians. Just speak to us, let us share some of our experiences with you and show you how Reach 2020 can help you. In the shortest term, we want people to get involved. We want as much feedback from our customers as we possibly can to make sure that as we're building out this architecture, that it's fitting and that it suits the needs of the customer.
And there may well be a LinkedIn group?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Reach 2020.
Right, okay. Some final thoughts then from you both, to sort of summarise where we are now and what Reach 2020 is going to deliver.
Well, I certainly think it's an exciting development, and it's long overdue, because the whole nature of networking now, it needs to be more agile, more dynamic. Dealing with, if you like, 90s architecture, it's had its day. It's still very robust, but it's had its day and it needs to move on. So I think this is an exciting future.
Andy?
I think I'm equally excited, but at two levels. One for the network operations team, who I feel have been perhaps undervalued and stifled. Their creativity has been stifled for a number of years and had to sort of stick with commodity budgets and delivering a commodity level service. And I think they should be allowed to open that up now and develop the services that they offer. And equally, from a business level, developing the architecture will allow the business to deliver improved services to their students. And they're all rated on the National Student Survey. It's all about student satisfaction equally, the teaching excellence framework and the research excellence framework. You know, these are all great measures. And the only way that we can make sure that we're keeping up and delivering consistently good results is if we've got a more agile infrastructure. So I think the business is going to benefit, the network operator is going to benefit. And I like to think that as Axians are well immersed in the sector right now, you know, we've got something good that we can bring them.
So exciting times then for campus
indeed.
network architecture. If you'd like to get involved, there should be some details below. You can contact Andy or Roger. Thank you both for joining me today. I'm David 18. This has been an Axians Network production. Thank you for watching.